Kia ora, good evening. Stadium Southland will not be fully completed this year, with Stadium Trust Deputy Chair Alan Dennis today saying it's hoped to have 4 of 5 stages finished by the end of the year. Delays have again pushed out the opening date, and new dates now set for mid to late November, several weeks past the previously expected completion date. It's unknown when the final 5th stage, which includes an administration block, will be built, but it's not expected to impact the venue's operation. Building delays, a naming rights sponsor not yet confirmed, and funding shortfalls of roughly $3.5 million mean the plan is now to build to stage 4 and groundwork only for stage 5. Work began on a development that will help the families of 6 Southland children at Southland Hospital today. An official groundbreaking and blessing ceremony this morning marked the start of work on the Ronald McDonald family room. Contractors were back this afternoon preparing the site. Construction is being funded by the Ronald McDonald House South Island Trust and will gift it to the Southern DHB on completion. This facility is expected to open in October and will be available for families with children in hospital on a needs basis. South Island General Manager Emma Jones says it's expected the facility will be well used.
There's a real need for more accommodation at the hospital that unfortunately the DHB hasn't been able to provide to date, but we're really pleased to be able to help them to do that.
So why choose to do this here in Southland?
Well, honestly, the first project was intended to be in Christchurch, and we were just about to kick it off when the February earthquakes happened, which have put it on hold. We're still working on that project, but the opportunity to start this one in the meantime came up, and we've just grabbed it because we want to help you guys.
Now the project was delayed. Can you explain why that is?
Really just with any of these projects, unfortunately, every now and then we get a bit more red tape than we had envisaged, and it was really just that. It was nothing untoward, just one of those things that takes a while and Christmas gets in the way and suddenly you're a few months behind where you'd wanted to be initially.
More than $1 million will be spent on eradicating Wildin Pilot mid-dome in Southland over the coming year. An extra $1.2 million was allocated to Wildin Pine's control and eradication work at mid-dome as part of Budget 2013. An estimated 8,000 hectares of land in the mid-dome area is affected by medium to dense Wildin Pine infestation, and another 60,000 hectares is affected on a smaller scale. The funding is for the 2013 to 14 year and will help protect landscapes and productive land. The Mid-Dome Wilding Trees Charitable Trust has been working to eradicate the pest plant for 7 years. An outbreak of Salmonella hindmarsh in Southland is causing concern for sheep farmers as they struggle to determine the cause and control contamination. Hundreds of sheep have died from the disease, and it's unknown what's causing contamination. The disease has affected sheep in the region every autumn over the past few years, with the number of losses growing each year. Several strains of Salmonella exist, and the cost of vaccinating is too great to cover them all. However, a Tautau vet, Giles Gill, says vaccination will cut down contamination. He says over the past few years there's been less preventative vaccination, leaving more animals susceptible and outbreaks more severe.
Quite often you just get a sudden death, you don't even get a chance to see them sick. If you do see sick ones, it's treatable to a degree, but quite often not very successful treatment, so you still end up with dead ewes.
So that can happen in less than 72 hours. What are the main reasons for contamination thought to be?
Oh, while they're sick, they're shedding a lot of bacteria, so an infected animal will shed a lot, which her flock mates then pick up, and then you've got other animals. More and more it becomes a bit of an explosion, really. That's how an epidemic starts.
So can it be treated?
It can be treated, but it's by the time you see them sick, usually they're just about on the way out, so treatment's not successful.
So there are vaccinations available though?
There are. It's a good vaccine, and we quite often have to use the vaccine in the face of an outbreak. You have to act soon enough, and you will still get losses after you've vaccinated, but it cuts down the problem.
Going into winter, we're doing strip grazing with sheep at the moment. Is that something that's advised not to do in an outbreak like this?
You're caught between two stools, really, as a farmer, because you're trying to do the best from a contamination point of view, but you're also trying to save winter feed. You don't want to run into lambing with no feed, so there's a trade-off both ways, really. So yes, shoving animals close together, increasing the stocking rate over a particular area will increase your risk, but you've also got to remember to save feed, so it's pretty hard.
How serious could this be?
It could get more serious. You never really know with any outbreak of any disease when it's peaked and when it's going to die away. Eventually it will, but we don't really know. This year we just don't know. It seems to be worse than last year, and last year seemed to be a bit worse than the year before.
After the break, Budget 2013 sees additional funding for the tertiary sector. What will it mean for the Southern Institute of Technology? Welcome back. There will be no new pokie machines, new gambling or TAB venues established in Southland, with councils opting to cease granting licences, but fears for growth in online gambling remain. The sinking lid policy adopted by local councils recently means no new licences for pokie machines can be issued in Southland. The number of gamblers seeking help for pokie addiction continues to rise, with the number of problem gamblers using a self-exclusion policy growing each year. The sinking lid policy is not a quick fix, but it is a positive step towards reducing issues and impacts to whānau and communities, according to Ngā Kete Māori health promoter Joyce Manahi.
For every one person with problem gambling, the ripple effect is quite varied and quite huge actually. It can affect up to 5 to 10 people for one person with problem gambling.
And what sort of numbers are seeking help here in Southland for pokie machine gambling?
The numbers are increasing every year. In 2011, there was 14 people that are self-excluding from the venues with addiction problems to pokie machines. 2012, there was about 54. So the number is already, unofficially of course, is already creeping up there.
So tell us about this multi-venue self-exclusion policy that's in place.
Multi-venue self-exclusion, people can self-exclude themselves by going to the venue manager or staff member. They can also come here to Ngā Kete and say, look, I want to self-exclude myself from venues to play the pokies, and we can set something up for them, and it costs nothing for the family members or the individual to do that.
Is it proving successful?
I think with the increased numbers every year, it's very successful.
Meanwhile, a spokesperson for the New Zealand Racing Board, which is opposed to councils adopting the sinking lid policy, says it's unnecessary given the growing trend in online gambling. Currently, pokie machine grants heavily subsidise New Zealand's racing industry, with millions of dollars of pokies money used as race stakes for racecourse maintenance and to improve facilities each year. In Southland, several racing clubs have been under joint investigation by the Serious Fraud Office and Internal Affairs since March, following concerns about allocation and use of pokie grants. Budget 2013 has allocated an extra $130 million to new investment in tertiary education and $40 million to marketing the international education industry. Sarah Bedford spoke to Southern Institute of Technology Chief Executive Penny Simmons about what this could mean for SIT.
Well, of course, we haven't got all the details yet, but it looks like certainly engineering and science programs will receive a slight increase in funding. So that's really good because the government is targeting getting more graduates in those areas, and we're happy to be involved in programs in those areas. So that looks quite straightforward. There's also a small amount of additional funding, I think, in the student component funding, about 0.9%, but we're not sure whether that is actually additional money going into that pot or whether it's an increase in the actual funding per student. So we're waiting to hear about that.
So additional funding for students, will that mean hopefully more student numbers or?
Yes, I hope so. I hope in the trades areas it looks as though there may be additional student places in there in those trade shortages. So hopefully we'll get the benefit of that. But it's just a little bit early to know the exact details of it.
So when will you find out exactly what it means?
Generally you find out as you have a discussion with the Tertiary Education Commission over the coming months as we finalise our funding for 2014, and a lot of it is dependent on our performance in 2013, whether we attract the numbers that we've targeted and whether they think then we're a good investment for more funding for the following year.
Now, also in the announcement was extra funding around marketing for international students. What do you think that could mean for SIT?
Well, it helps us to piggyback on that NZ Inc. Brand. So it's out there branding New Zealand education, raising awareness, just really a marketing thrust to help institutions in their individual marketing to attract new students or international students. So it really does some of that early foundation work for us to come in and piggyback on.
Now, SIT already has a good number of international students. Are you still hoping to continue growing those numbers?
Yes, I think it's important for 2 or 3 reasons. One, it's an additional revenue stream for us, and the government have signalled very clearly that they see this as an opportunity that institutions should be pursuing, but also because it helps with the number of programs that we can offer to domestic students. The more international students we have, the greater our portfolio of programs that we can have. So that's important for our domestic students. And also down here in Southland, it's important for our industries. We still have some industries with skill shortages, and also for our population to safeguard our population numbers. So it has a myriad of flow-on impacts, and we need to be mindful of all those.
A candlelight service in Invercargill at the weekend was a chance to spread a message and reduce stigma. Around 20 people gathered at Knox Church on Sunday for a candlelight service, part of International AIDS Candlelight Memorial Day. Southland HIV/AIDS Support Group Secretary Sue Ballum says the event is held to raise awareness, reduce stigma and support those affected by HIV and AIDS, including families. It's also a chance to remember those who have died from AIDS. In the past, the event has been held at Bluff Hill but was moved last year as inclement weather had affected attendance. And that's it from news. Coming up in sport, the Highlanders are taken down by the Bulls. That's after the weather next. Good night.